Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is VIN 259-0259. It is a 2016 3R1, which is Matador Red Mica, also known as MRM or Vermilion in other markets, with LA20 or black interior. Now, being VIN 259, it is definitely one of the early ones. In VIN order, it is the 69th US 49 car that was produced. So outside of pre-production cars, things like that. So it's definitely one of the earlier ones. It looks like it's stock other than it having an RR Racing oil catch can. There may be more to that, and I'll get into that in a minute as to why it only has that and nothing else. But first and foremost, production statistics. So here we go. 106 Matador Red Micas out of the 2,348. So it's already a rare car. Out of the 106, 89 had the LA20 black interior. Specific for 2016, 73 out of the 1,418 cars were Matador Red Mica. 57 had LA20 or black interior. So this car is one of 57 that exists in the combo. I would say common for Matador Red Mica because most of them had black interior, but your chances of finding Matador Red Mica are pretty slim. However, it seems like about 10% of them have been listed for sale on AutoTrader this year. So if you look back at my previous videos, in the last 10 or so videos, I think there's 3 or 4 of them that have been Matador Red Mica already. So, you know, they're not common despite seeing quite a few of them for sale lately. And so now we're on to Carfax, Epic VIN, and AutoCheck. Carfax shows this as a 2-owner, no accident car. Epic VIN shows it as a 3-owner, no accident car. And AutoCheck shows it as a 2-owner, no accident car. You've heard me talk about in other videos. I think Epic VIN over-reports the number of owners. Like if it was listed for sale and pulled, it shows it as another owner. Don't know why they need to adjust that, but it looks like it's a 2-owner, no accident car. Previous sales, looks like it was originally a corporate fleet vehicle. And so that means it doesn't necessarily mean Lexus owned it because I don't see it was owned in Plano, Texas or Torrance, California. It was just in Florida. So it was a leasing company most likely that owned it and leased it out as the first owner. September of 2017, $60,000 with 4,500 miles in Florida. It's still for sale in November and eventually it looks like it's sold. And now it's for sale 8 years later for only $1,000 less than it was before. Now with 31,000 miles, also in Florida. So pretty crazy when you think about the values on these cars. I don't know any other mass-produced cars that you could have driven for 8 years and only lost $1,000, of course, minus inflation and fuel and everything else. But the value of the car only dropped $1,000 in 8 years. That's pretty impressive. All right, so now on to the pictures. Let's look at the pictures very closely. They're pretty high-quality pictures. I see 0 issues, exterior and interior, and I'm reaching here, but if you look at the center console, you can see the carbon fiber. It may be a reflection, but it looks like it's starting to delaminate there. The left and right front dash pieces have already been replaced, and I'll get to that in the service history, but the doors, I don't see any delaminating carbon fiber, don't see any excessive wear. This car has 30,000 miles, so I don't expect anything like that. But definitely looks really clean. I don't see any issues, no red flags yet. I do see that the battery has a January of 2023 date, so we're getting towards the end of 2025, so the battery is almost 3 years old. Probably expect to replace a battery pretty soon, but really I see no other major concerns. Has that RR Racing oil separator. You see a lot of cars run that, but usually it's with other mods and things like that. This is the only modification I see done on this car. Service history. I actually had to have a couple pieces of paper on my notes for the service history, and there's a reason, so we'll get into that. It's going to be kind of lengthy here, but pay attention because it's important if you're looking at this car. First entry of note, November of 17, it was a general repair to a painting company. Don't know what was repaired, what was repainted. There was something done there. And also they reattached the left front lower grille. Very common, I've talked about this in other videos. They did these lower grills on these cars, they fit so loosely that you could just push on them and they could get out of place. And my car's no exception, mine's the same way, but you can replace them. Lexus has never updated that part, so it still fits poorly. If you replace it, it's gonna fit the exact same way. And you see that in complaints in a lot of the service histories of this car, so again, no exception there. February of 2018 at 6,000 miles, the low pressure fuel pump at the request of the owner was reprogrammed. So that's called the EG1617 customer service campaign. That's the humming or buzzing that you may hear from the back seat. All they do is reprogram the module and it goes away. April of 2018, 7,000 miles, the JLB recall, that's the high pressure fuel pumps, that recall was done. AC was reported being low on Freon, and they found it leaking at the O-rings where you fill them on the high side and low side on the line. So not unusual for something like that to happen, but it was addressed. Also in the same service, a complaint about transmission issues and hesitation. The transmission was reset and they sent it, and that was it. You're gonna find with this car, transmission and hesitation issues, there's gonna be a lot of complaints, and I don't think they ever got to the bottom of it, and we'll get into details here in a minute. July of 2018 at 8,600 miles, the AC was not cooling again. Transmission shift flare complaints, and the tech said that there was no issues, but they changed the transmission fluid even though Lexus stated in the service history here it's a sealed unit, and don't ever do that. Replace the transmission fluid on these cars. They need it, needs to be done. But 8,600 miles, this car's already had the transmission fluid changed once. Just to clarify too, you're gonna hear me talk about shift flares, that's what they call it. Shift flare is like basically where the transmission kind of jumps and before it catches the next gear. That would be the closest thing I can equate to it. But there's other manufacturers and other makes that have issues with transmission shift flares, especially if you ever own a Ford. And so I own a Ford too. That's something that is indicative of transmission issues. 100 miles later in July of 2018, buff 5 panels, but there was also a dent repair and a right front wheel repair, something of note. February of 2019 at 11,000 miles, again, engine hesitation, misfires felt, and they adjusted the NOx sensor values, but there weren't any stored codes. So there's something going on here, and they noted that the NOx sensors, the values weren't where they should be, so they adjusted them and they sent it down the road. November 19, 15,000 miles to 4,000 miles later, the KLG customer service program was done. That's the GPS update where if you're driving here, it shows you off on the side of the road. That's an easy reprogram. Most of these cars get it done, and that's another common issue that gets sorted. Also in that same service, again, transmission issues, misfire, no codes, but nothing was done because there's no code, so the tech doesn't know how to diagnose it, I suppose. 420, 17,000 miles. Again, transmission issues, delayed acceleration, clunk in a passenger side area when turned all the way to the left and reversing. They couldn't replicate any of it. There were, again, no codes stored. I don't know if this is an owner being just super anal about stuff or if there really is an issue here. October of 2020 at 20,000 miles, the oil was reported as being overfilled. The shift knob was loose, so they tightened it. The rear view mirror was loose, so they tightened it. A noise coming from the exhaust, and they opened a Toyota case about this. Again, the misfire, rough idle, and nothing was done, or if there was something done, it doesn't say what was done. June of 2021, 22,000 miles, noise coming from the engine fluctuates with RPM. I have a feeling they're talking about the high pressure fuel pump noise. These cars, they have two high pressure mechanical fuel pumps that run off the camshafts on the top back of the engine. And my car has had complaints about it too by the previous owner. The fuel pumps were replaced twice under warranty for that, and they still make noise. And I think that's what they're talking about here. You see that complaint in a lot of other service histories, and nothing was done, but that's what it is. Okay, so the power went out. Ha! How cool was that? Power went out. So, October of 2021, 23,000 miles, again with the shift flare, rough idle, and again, nothing was done. So it's apparent that this owner is frustrated with this car. You know, it almost sounds like a lemon, except they couldn't reproduce the issues. There's no code stored, so there's obviously some other issue. Again, it looks like a few hundred miles later, in August of 21 again, they got Lexus Engineering involved with this, and with the misfire hesitation again, and it doesn't say what was done, but I don't think they resolved it because a year later, August of 2022, they did the transmission service yet again. Rain sensor gel pack was replaced, that they kind of ooze, that happens. And again, with the hesitation, the misfire, the transmission issues, the car just seems like whatever they do, it's not resolved, it's not fixed. And the last service, December of 2022, 26,000 miles, the left and right dash panels for the carbon fiber were replaced. 6 years from new, Goodwill replaced, so no cost to the owner. And there is nothing on the Carfax or AutoCheck about service past that. So basically, this car was fairly well serviced until 2022, and then in the last 3+ years, there's been nothing. So I would check with the current owner, because it is for sale on the private seller exchange on AutoTrader. I would check with the current owner to see what the previous service has been done in the last 3 years. The service history aside, everything else looks fine. So I guess it's going to be up to you to look and see if the shift hesitation, the idling, things like that, the rough idle, if that really is an issue, or if the owner's being like super anal, just overly anal about it, expecting it to be like a Cadillac or something, and you know it's a sports sedan, it's not a Cadillac. If it's something like that, or if there really is an issue and you need to run away from this. So I would inspect it, test drive it very carefully, make sure the car is cold when you test drive it, because it seems like all these issues, it says it happens within like 4 to 7 minutes of the car starting. And so the transmission issues aside, I think I understand what the owner's talking about. So these cars hold 16 quarts of transmission fluid, 4 gallons of fluid, and it takes a long time for the transmission to fully warm up. And so if you are driving it anything other than like just super easy, especially in that first 4 to 7, even 10 minutes, it's going to shift slowly, it's going to hesitate, and this flare that he talks about, it's going to do that. And I can replicate it in my car when, you know, I've driven my car enough to understand what it's doing. And so you'll drive it, the RPM will like rise, and it's like it doesn't catch before it goes into the next gear. Usually second gear, third gear, something like that. That's common to see on these cars. You see transmission complaints about slow shifting, things like that, but after it warms up, it goes away. That's because these cars take forever for the transmission to warm up. And when I did the 60,000 mile service on my car, I did it myself. I had a scanner plugged in to watch the actual transmission temperature, and it takes like 20 minutes sitting there at idle for the transmission to come up to temperature. It takes a long time. And so even driving, 10 minutes is not unusual. And so if I go pick my daughter up from school, it's 10 miles away. By the time I'm there, it's probably warmed up. But on the way, it's going to shift slow, it's going to shift lazy, and it's going to do that kind of where it jumps between gears as it shifts if you do it anything other than very, very light throttle. I think in reality, I think there's no issue here, but you know, approach it with caution just in case. But I don't see any other red flags other than that. So the price, there's actually another Matador red mica that I just talked about in a couple videos. Go back a couple videos and you can see it. Very similar price, very similar mileage. And it's kind of where the market is for these right now. Kind of in the mid to upper 50s is about where this car should be for a clean title, no accident car with no issues. So the Valley plate, definitely something worth looking at. Get it inspected. It does have low miles, but again, it's time and heat cycles. So if this car had a lot of short trips, maybe due for replacement or resealing of the Valley plate pretty soon. Lower control arm bushings. Turn the wheels left and right, look at the inside of the front tires, make sure they're not worn. If they are, you're on the hook for front tires and lower control arm bushings. But the rest of it looks fairly well sorted, but I don't know. I think the only case where I would buy this car is if I could reassure myself that there's no transmission or engine issues. If there aren't, it's probably an all right buy, but if I even get the slightest hesitation or anything after the transmission's been warmed up, I'm walking away from this one. Transmissions on these cars are pretty expensive. You can get a used one for like $1,500, $2,000, something like that. But and they share the same transmission as the RCF, so you have that going for it. It's easy to source a used transmission for these cars. So I feel like I'm rambling on with this one, but this is VIN 259. Approach it with caution, but it has the potential to be a good one. So look very, very closely, drive it closely, drive it for a while, put some miles on it, and if it is, it may be a good car for you, but if not, it could be a basket case. So this is your warning. Be careful, but it could be a good one. So thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you soon.